Hey, how's it going all? Just want to do a lesson, just a little talk on mathematical properties of an oblate spheroid. And so here we go. This is the shape, the alleged shape of the Earth. So, I just want to go into what some of the implications are for us standing on this kind of a structure on these gravity vectors. And so, again, feel free to share, re-upload, mirror, ask questions, etc. So first we need to kind of understand the geometry, and thankfully constructing an oblate spheroid is not that complicated. You simply take an ellipse and rotate it around its minor axis, which is basically like its skinnier length, and you just rotate it 360 degrees. And so that helps us because obviously the properties of an ellipse mathematically are very well understood. And so let's work with that. So let's take a look at these Freemason G vectors. And so we know by consensus, no one, at least from what I've heard so far from the ball earth community, will argue that these gravity vectors would need to act perpendicular to the tangent line of any point P on the surface of an oblate spheroid. This is obvious. That means that everybody would be be able to like stand and not be leaning in any kind of way. So we're always sort of standing, everything is resting perpendicular to the surface of this apparent oblate Earth. And so the strength again is governed by this formula. Replace D with R in this case, but that's what governs the strength of these perpendicular lines that are tangent to any point P on the surface of this oblate spheroid. And so let's, again, just for now, let's assume that this voodoo can be applied point-wise per atom and the vectors don't interfere, which, if you know anything about my other videos, I obviously have issues with. This is not realizable mathematically. You would need orthogonality in some way, and it cannot be an orientation because that's already governed by, what I said earlier, being perpendicular to this tangent line towards the inner part of the spheroid. And so, we would need orthogonality in some way and an intelligent machine giving it this independence to act in three-dimensional space, giving it sort of authorization to act only on that atom alone. Keyword act, this is a double meaning for me. These forces are not actually exerting any real pressure, else we could actually be able to measure it and understand its influence on the surfaces of objects, which, this is why you'll get a lot of stuff from ballers like, a lot of word salad, a lot of verbiage, not anything related to a free body diagram, putting pen to paper, explaining, the forces where they're acting, their orientation. And, because once they put that to paper, we're going to start asking, what are the influences of these forces in its surroundings, not just at the atomic level. So, but here we go. We have this framework, nothing controversial at this point. But here are some of the implications. So first we have to understand, how do we draw a normal line to this tangent on an oblate spheroid? And the mathematics is fairly simple. So there's these two foci on a ellipse, and they will govern how we're able to construct these normal lines. So the normal bisects the angle between the two lines of the foci. So here are the foci, and so these are very, very important. So if you pick any point P on this surface, let's use the one that's on here, the intersection of the normal line and the tangent line and the surface of the oblate spheroid, where all those three things intersect, let's look at that point for now. Basically, you would then, from that point, you would draw a line from that point to one of the foci and then another line to the other foci. And then essentially that triangle that's made, the normal line will split the angle that is formed in between those two lines. And so that is the quote rule for creating this normal line, and then you can see it will not shoot through the center of this oblate spheroid. And so to me that has certain implications that I'm going to discuss, but from a sort of mathematical perspective and a geometric perspective, this is the direction that these gravity vectors would act according to ball earth theory. So these Freemason vector G's would not all be shooting through the center of the Earth. That I hope is very clear. Again, we're using an ellipse, a 2D representation, but very, very simple. That we know the relationship of how to construct these, or the orientation of these vectors. We understand how to make them. And so we can see that only 4 of them will shoot through the center, and I exaggerated it, but I put those black dots there. That's the only situation where, the normal will bisect, the 2 lines between that point and the 2 foci, and then shoot through the absolute center point of this ellipse. And so, to me, this has implications. So, well, what's the big deal? Well, to me, it is a big deal because such an apparently large and powerful force is pulling along these perpendicular lines, these normal lines, but not uniformly across the surface of the Earth. So, in my opinion, we should start to see strange effects when a person moves away from the places where the Freemason G vectors point towards the center of the Earth. So, to me, this should easily be observable with planes, for example, or any high-speed vehicle which is experiencing the change in these G vectors orientation quickly. And so, ballers will say, and they have said, in the debates and in the comment boards, that the oblateness is small, so it effectively is acting like a sphere. However, they can't argue that the forces acting apparently along these minute differences are massive. We have to think that, when you move along the surface of the Earth, if these forces are real, along each orientation, literally every step we take, it's along that direction. It's the summation of all the things that, are sort of acting along that line, in 3-dimensional space. That is the sum force of all that is pulling towards, not in this case the center of the Earth, but along these G vectors. And so, it's everything that's aligned with that, will be acting along those directions. And so even a minor change in orientation would we can say that the orientation is negligible. It will still pretty much shoot through the middle of this ellipse. But the problem is that it's going to be a massive amount of force, alleged force, that is acting along that orientation. And so, to me, this is huge implications. We would be able to see this if this were real. There would be real effects for this oblateness. And so, to me, again, this is one of the many reasons that show that this is absolutely nonsensical, non-physical. And so, again, we have just friendly pushback. These people are coming high and mighty, that they're the scholars, that they're the gatekeepers to knowledge, wisdom, understanding, truth, discernment, righteousness, all this kind of stuff. So, I'm talking with Fight the Flat Earth, and then I'm like, he's like, the center of gravity stays the same as the oblateness is so small, it's so slight, it doesn't matter. Watch my Flirfs or Idiots episode 1, okay? The fact that you don't understand yet still call out fake. The fact that you don't yet still call out fake proves how dense you are. The fact you don't understand yet still call out fake proves. Okay. Anyway, so let's just go with the first part. Center of gravity stays the same as the oblateness is so slight it doesn't matter. I'm like, just to clarify, you do concede the math would require most gravity vectors on an oblate spheroid would not go through the center or a single point. The 4 points on the top, bottom, left, right would, but not the rest, correct? According to Fight the Flat Earth, no, not at all. Again, you show your basic lack of knowledge. I'm like, your mentor, Red's Rhetoric, admitted this on the after show. Are you sure you don't want to retract the statement? This lack of understanding of mathematics behind an oblate spheroid, I will give you a moment to think and retract. Then he's like, no, and I'll explain why you were wrong on Saturday, blah, blah, blah. So here's the key. So in his world, and I'm excited to see, his mathematical, treatise on this. So, unless I'm mistaken, which obviously I've gone through it, it's very straightforward. These gravity vectors present a problem on an oblate spheroid. They present a problem on a sphere. It's just, in my opinion, magnified slightly. It's like the, icing on the cake kind of thing that, these effects are not physical, and they're not exerting any real pressure anyway, but their orientation is problematic as well because they're all shooting in different directions, or not in a sort of symmetric way, consistent way along the surface of this apparent oblate Earth. And so, again, just word of caution, these people are very, very aggressive, very, you're dumb. No, you go back to high school, your degree should be taken away from you and all this kind of stuff. It's this is the vibe on the earth right now. It's very much, uniformity. Everybody should kind of go along with the mainstream. Even if we're wrong, we don't deserve this kind of ridicule. We're just starting from first principles. So again, to me, this entire agenda fits perfectly with the narrative of being microchipped, this whole surveillance state, just conform or be ridiculed. And so I will definitely I have no issues being ridiculed. I have no issues with believing that a level stays level only on a flat surface, we got to just, again, let them know that what they believe is madness. So to me, the earth is obviously, observably, and provably flat. Hope everyone's doing well. Bye.